the rules at par to the Act? Are the rules, can the rules override the Act? And as I would be submitting before your Lordship, that I think none of these three scenarios apply. At times, the rules will override the Act, and at times, the rule will be subordinate to the Act. So I will place before your Lordship this fourth option. My Lord, then what I'll do is I'll move on to each of these sections. And there are precise questions which your Lordships have raised regarding the various clauses and their constitutionality and problems. So I'll take your Lordship through each of these sections, from section 2 to section 7. And in the end, my Lord, I would like to address your Lordship regarding two judgments. My Lord, I think there are two central judgments which the petitioners have relied upon as legal precedents for the principles of law and constitutional principles which the petitioners have placed before your Lordship. One is the Ba Kakar case, PLD 2012 Supreme Court. And the other is a recent judgment of this court, the Ghulam Muhyiddin case. Now, if the petitioners are correct in terms of their reading of these judgments, then in terms of these judgments, this law would be unconstitutional. So my submission on this legal precedent would be crucial. I'll be making the submission that as far as the Bas Kakar case is concerned, PLD 2012 Supreme Court, that is clearly distinguishable in terms of the law which was involved, the Contempt of Court Act 2012. But as far as Ghulam Muhyiddin case is concerned, which concerned the Review Act which was part, I would be respectfully submitting before your Lordship that parts of those judgments have to be revisited. Not the entire judgment, but parts of that. My Lord, let me come to my...
have to be
revisited. But only parts of that judgment, my Lord. My Lord, if I may take your Lordship to my first submission. And my first submission, as His Lordship, what I've done is that I framed the questions and then I framed short answers and then I'll make submission. Let me just read the question. The first question is, and this is a question I think which has been troubling her ladyship, Justice Aisha Malik, whether the term law occurring in Article 191 Constitution 1973 includes acts of parliament, whether the term law occurring in Article 191 itself confers legislative competence and or requires legislative competence to be based on some other provision of the Constitution and or legislative entry in the fourth schedule. If the Parliament has the power to enact a law, enact such a law, then what are the limitations of such a law? My Lord, if your Lordships may turn to the third page of the brief note which I've given your Lordship, and the heading is B, where I deal with this question. Now, my Lord, the term subject to law. Now, question has occurred and repeatedly been asked, is this conferment or is this restriction? What I would be submitting before your Lordship is that it is both. It has two parts, subject to and law. So subject to restricts and law confers. Now, let me first clear I think it is a confusion which has occurred whether the term law as used in Article 191 means or includes acts of parliament or not. My Lord, in order to understand this, my Lord, let us first go to the Supreme Court rules and let us examine how the Supreme Court, full court in 1980 which sat, looked at this term law, and the answer lies in that. If I may take your Lordships to the Supreme Court rules, Order 11, which is the critical section dealing with the Chief Justice being the master of the roster. How did they understand this term law? If your Lordships have Order 11, my Lords. If I may read, and I'll only read the first line, critical line. Save as otherwise provided by law or by these rules. Now, your lordship may notice the language in this. Save as otherwise, critical word, otherwise, provided by law. My lord, a bare reading of this provision shows that one is envisaging some kind of statutory law. And I will come to the words otherwise later. Otherwise indicates that if law here refers to act, there may be some other arrangement in some other statute. Now,
Otherwise provided by law what? पूरा पढ़िए ना इसको.
by law.
No, kindly read the whole.
Save as otherwise provided by law and by these rules, every cause
Or by these rules. Or by these.
or by these rules, every cause, appeal or matter shall be heard and disposed of by a bench consisting of not less than 3 judges to be nominated by the Supreme Court.
This goes to the strength of the bench, not who is to sit on the bench.
So I'm not coming to, I'm simply saying, how do we understand this term law, which occurs in Article 191? An indication of that is given in this order. This clearly implies some kind of statutory law, and I'll come to the words otherwise later when I examine what is the relationship between rules and act. Now, to further clarify that the word law must include an act of parliament, there is a definition section in this Supreme Court rules. Now, your lordship may kindly come to that. If your lordships may kindly see order 2.
Mr. Siddiqui?
Yes.
The question was that if it is only to be an act of parliament, then the constitution might have used the word act of parliament, not that the word law includes an act of parliament. The whole issue was that subject to law, law is a very broad term,
Yes.
includes many things,
Yes.
including an act of parliament.
Yes.
And the Attorney General said that we should read into the word law the fact that it's just an act of parliament. Hence the issue as to how to read the word law.
I'm-
आप जो बहस कर रहे हैं कि लॉ में एक्ट ऑफ पार्लियामेंट है वो तो अंडरस्टूड है, सिर्फ
मैं-
ये है कि टू द एक्सक्लूजन ऑफ एवरीथिंग एल्स हम इसको लॉ में पढ़ेंगे.
मैं to the exclusion argue नहीं कर रहा हूं, and the reason I am trying to clarify so that there is no confusion is to come to my argument about conferment under Article 190. If I may just make one point on this.
You see, there are two issues
Yes,
here.
yes.
If I interject now,
Ji.
I'm here to hear you. Please conclude your submissions. If someone wants to ask a question, if you start responding to each query, I don't even know what your argument is.
वापस आए, आपको बताएं आप चमकेंगे गांव देहात मुहिम के तहत ताहाल टाउन कमेटी हाजीपुर में सफाई सुथराई का काम शुरू ना किया जा सका। शहर भर में गंदगी खलासत के ढेर